Have you ever stopped to consider that an invisible force silently controls every outcome in your life? That perhaps the reason you're not yet living the life you desire isn't a lack of effort, but something infinitely simpler and more powerful. The most curious thing is that this force is right there within your reach right now, yet 99% of people ignore it because it's too simple to seem real. What I'm about to reveal to you isn't a motivational idea, it's not luck, and it's definitely not coincidence. It's a universal law. I didn't invent it. I merely discovered how to make it work in my favor. And when I decided to follow it to the letter, my life was turned upside down. For a long time, I believed that the secret to success lay in physical effort, in working more hours, in proving my worth to the world. I woke up every day believing that if I just did more, if I dedicated myself to exhaustion, something would change. But the more I did, the more trapped I felt. It was as if the world wasn't listening to me, as if nothing responded to my efforts. It was then that I understood something that completely changed the direction of my life. The world doesn't respond to what you do. It responds to who you are, to what you vibrate, to what you deeply feel within. Everything that exists is energy, and every thought, every emotion, and every belief you harbor emits a frequency, and that frequency is the true magnet of your reality. I realized that my life was a direct result of the images and emotions I held within my mind, even when I thought I was just reacting to circumstances. When you live feeling scarcity, fear, frustration, or doubt, the universe doesn't listen to what you desire. It responds to what you vibrate. And as unfair as it may seem, that is the law. It's like tuning a radio. If you want to listen to classical music, there's no point in leaving the dial on a rock station. You need to adjust the frequency until you hear what you desire. The same happens with life. If you vibrate at the frequency of worry, you cannot attract peace. If you vibrate at the frequency of scarcity, you cannot attract abundance. It's a simple matter of tuning in. Think of how many times you've woken up on a bad day and everything seemed to go wrong. You're late, traffic snarls, the mood of people around you seems worse, and suddenly the entire day seems to conspire against you. It's not coincidence. It's the energy you emitted right upon waking returning to you in the form of experiences. But the opposite is also true. There are days when you feel light, confident, grateful, and everything seems to flow. Kind people cross your path, ideas emerge out of nowhere, opportunities appear effortlessly. This is living proof that reality isn't random. It merely reflects who you are internally. This is exactly what I learned when I was at rock bottom. I had no money, no education, and honestly, I saw no way out. My vibration was one of survival. I thought about bills, about failures, about everything that wasn't working, and guess what happened? More of that kept appearing. Life doesn't make judgments, it simply returns what you transmit. When I understood this, everything changed. I realized that the universe was a perfect mirror. It doesn't reflect what you want, but rather who you are being. And that was the moment I stopped trying to change the world outside and started changing my inner world. Think about this. If your mind were a cinema screen, what kind of movie have you been projecting every day? One of scarcity, fear, of never enough, or one of confidence, gratitude, the certainty that something greater is conspiring in your favor? Most people live repeating the same old script without realizing they are the scriptwriter, the director, and the protagonist all at once. When you change the script within your mind, the entire scene transforms. And this isn't poetry, it's science. Studies in neuroscience show that our thoughts create electrical and chemical patterns in the brain that determine what we perceive, how we react, and even which opportunities we are capable of recognizing. But there's a detail almost everyone ignores. The conscious mind may desire something, but it's the subconscious mind that governs behavior and experiences. It is the true command center, and it doesn't understand logical language. It understands emotion and repetition. Therefore, transformation doesn't come just from thinking positive, but from feeling positive. It is emotion that imprints the new vibration onto the subconscious. When you imagine with intensity, when you feel gratitude as if you already have what you desire, you are reprogramming the mind that creates your reality. When I started applying this, I began to notice small coincidences. which soon ceased to be coincidences. I would think of someone, and that person would call. I needed an opportunity, and it would appear out of nowhere. It was as if the world was responding to every new vibration I emitted, and that was exactly what was happening, because the universe is a living frequency. It simply mirrors back what you transmit. The mistake many make is trying to change the results without changing the energy that creates them. They want prosperity, but they keep complaining about a lack of money. They want love, but they feel unworthy. They want freedom, but they remain trapped by fear. It's like planting lemon seeds and expecting to harvest apples. The harvest is always compatible with the seed, and the seed is your inner vibration. From the moment you understand this, the game changes completely. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become the creator of your reality. You begin to realize that nothing that happens is random. Everything is an energetic response. Every thought is a command. Every emotion is a frequency. And the sum of these is what you call life. Today I can state with absolute certainty, everything starts in the mind. Everything you see in the physical world first existed in the invisible world of thoughts. The car, the house, the career, the relationship. Everything began as a mental image sustained by emotion. The problem is that most people use this power against themselves, holding images of fear, failure, and doubt. But the same power that creates fear is what creates success. It only depends on how you use it. Therefore, if you truly want to change your life, don't try to change the world. Change your vibration. Physical reality is merely the echo of what you feel. When you change the feeling, you change the sound, and the echo responds on a new frequency. I've seen this happen with myself and with thousands of people over the years. Ordinary people who learned to control their minds and began to create the extraordinary. All they did was shift their focus from fear to faith, from doubt to certainty, from scarcity to abundance, and the universe, as always, responded precisely, because it never makes a mistake. It simply returns what you are. The most powerful mirror that exists isn't the one hanging on the wall. It's the invisible mirror I carry within me, and which you also carry within yourself. It doesn't reflect physical appearance, but rather the beliefs, emotions, and thoughts you cultivate in silence. For a long time, I tried to change things around me, as if the external world were the problem. I tried to adjust my job, the people, the circumstances, believing that if the setting changed, I would finally feel better. But the scenario kept repeating itself, only with new characters and new excuses. It was then that I realized the truth. The world doesn't change from the outside in. It changes from the inside out. What you see is merely the projection of what is already imprinted in your subconscious mind. The subconscious is like a silent projector. It doesn't offer opinions, doesn't argue, doesn't analyze. It merely plays the film you insist on running within it. If the internal script is one of scarcity, fear, self-sabotage, that is what will manifest on the screen of life. And the most curious thing is that you might even consciously desire good things, but if the subconscious doesn't believe it's possible or deserved, the result will always be the same. It's like trying to drive a car by accelerating with your right foot and braking with your left foot at the same time. The desire is there, but the programming prevents the movement. The subconscious mind is responsible for about 96% of your daily actions and decisions. It governs your habits, your reactions, and the way you interpret the world. It is shaped by repetition, by childhood experiences, by the words you heard, by the fears you absorbed. How many times have you heard that money is difficult, that success is for the few, that you need to settle for little? Each of these phrases transformed into a silent command within your mind, and without realizing it, you began to live obeying these invisible orders. The truth is that no one escapes their own mental image. You can wear different clothes, move to a different city, change jobs, but if you continue to believe you are the same as before, the result will always be identical. The subconscious is like fertile soil. It accepts any seed. If you plant doubt, it germinates uncertainty. If you plant faith and clarity, it blossoms into extraordinary results. The problem is that most people spend their lives planting the same old seeds, expecting a different harvest. I learned this through experience. When I looked around me and saw the life I had, the low-paying jobs, the debts, the lack of perspective, I didn't realize that all of it was the exact reflection of the image I held of myself. I saw myself as someone limited, uneducated, without chances, and the subconscious merely confirmed this belief. It is loyal. It will always prove you right about what you believe yourself to be. It was only when I began to change this image that the world started to respond differently. I started with something simple, yet profoundly transformative. Visualization with emotion. Every morning before getting up, I would close my eyes and vividly imagine the life I wanted to live. I didn't just see it, I felt it. I felt the emotion of already being there. I didn't ask, I gave thanks. I mentally repeated, I am so grateful to be living this incredible life, to be prosperous, free and happy. At first, it seemed like mere imagination, but over time, the feeling became real. And when that emotion became real, my subconscious accepted it as truth. From that moment on, the external world began to shift, slowly but steadily. The subconscious mind doesn't differentiate between what's real and what's imagined. It responds only to the dominant emotion. That's why when you feel fear, your body reacts as if the danger were real. Your heart races, your body perspires, your stomach tightens. All this just from a mental image. The same holds true for feelings of prosperity, joy, and success. When you intensely feel these emotions, your subconscious believes this is already your reality and begins to adjust your behavior, perceptions, and opportunities to align the physical world with your inner world. Most people make the mistake of trying to change reality through sheer willpower. Willpower is finite and exhausting, but when you change the subconscious image, effort ceases to be necessary because the subconscious creates automatic habits that propel you in the right direction. You start doing what once seemed difficult, effortlessly. The right ideas emerge, the right people appear, the right circumstances fall into place. This isn't magic, it's vibrational coherence. I recall a specific instance involving a friend who dreamed of winning a second Oscar. He already had one, but he desired another. I told him, take a photo with your award in your right hand, then take another with your left hand, and ask someone to merge the two images. Place this photo somewhere visible and look at it every day. He did exactly that, and shortly thereafter he won his second Oscar. Some people call that a coincidence. I call it alignment. His subconscious began to believe it was already true, and the world obediently simply confirmed what his mind had already accepted. Modern science is now proving what the great masters have known for centuries. Research in neuroplasticity shows that the brain physically changes as you repeat thoughts and emotions. Each mental image creates new connections between neurons, strengthening pathways that evolve into habits and behaviors. When you repeatedly imagine something with emotion, your brain literally begins to act as if it were already real. And when it believes, the body and actions naturally follow suit. Therefore, if you want to change the reflection of your life, stop trying to adjust the mirror. Change the image it reflects. If you looked and didn't like what you saw, it's not the mirror that's wrong. It's the internal recording that needs to be rewritten. Start right now to create a new image of yourself. See yourself as confident, prosperous, worthy of love and success. Feel that emotion as if it were already real. Do this every day, with intensity and gratitude. And when you least expect it, life will begin to reflect exactly this new image, because the subconscious is loyal. It does not fail. It simply returns, perfectly, what you believe yourself to be. There's a silent mistake that traps even the most intelligent people, the habit of believing they need to understand everything before taking action. I've seen brilliant minds become paralyzed by wanting perfect explanations, concrete proof, absolute guarantees before taking a single step. The fear of making mistakes, of appearing naive, of being disappointed, all of this creates an illusion of control that, in practice, only postpones transformation. I myself fell into this trap for a long time. I thought I needed to comprehend every detail, plan every move, foresee every consequence. But the truth is, the universe doesn't respond to logic. It responds to faith, to energy, to action consistent with the vibration you emit. I realized that the rational mind is like a disciplined but blind soldier. It needs orders. It needs to be guided. If you allow it to govern on its own, It will keep you confined to your comfort zone, where everything is familiar but nothing grows. That's why so many intelligent people spend their lives studying, accumulating information, yet remain frustrated. They know what they should do, but they don't do it. They get stuck between I understand and I'm not ready yet. And that is the space where dreams die. True transformation doesn't come from intellectual understanding. It comes from conscious obedience to universal principles that work regardless of your comprehension. When I read Think and Grow Rich, I didn't understand everything. Many passages seemed confusing, some even naive, but I made a decision to do exactly what was written, even without fully comprehending it. And that's what changed everything. The rational mind questioned, but faith executed, and when faith acts, understanding follows, because experience is the best teacher. The ego wants to control, wants to understand before trusting, wants proof before committing. But life doesn't work that way. You don't receive the manual before starting the game. You learn by playing, adjusting, trusting the process. I remember a young man who approached me years ago saying, "Bob, I know everything about the law of attraction. I've read your books, watched all your videos. I understand the concepts." I looked at him and asked, "Then why is your life still the same?" He remained silent. Because knowing is not the same as doing, and doing is not the same as being. Universal laws don't demand that you comprehend them. They demand that you respect them. Just like gravity, they work whether you believe in them or not. When you jump from a building, you don't need to understand physics to fall. You just need to defy the law. The same applies to the law of attraction. It responds to vibration, not logic. And while you try to understand how it will work, you are vibrating doubt. And doubt blocks the flow of creation. I learned to trust before I understood. And it was at that moment that life began to flow. I started noticing signs, coincidences, opportunities. I didn't have all the answers, but I had a conviction. If I maintained faith and followed the instructions to the letter, the path would reveal itself step by step. And it always did. Many believe that faith is a religious feeling. It is not. Faith is a mental discipline. It is maintaining the vision when there is no evidence. It is believing in the invisible until it becomes visible. It is acting as if it were already real, even if the world says otherwise. When you develop this capacity, the impossible becomes natural, because the universe is malleable by those who trust the process. I like to compare this principle to an airplane flying through fog. The pilot cannot see the destination, but trusts the instruments. He doesn't need to see the airport to continue. He simply follows the system. The same thing happens with you. Faith is your instrument. If you proceed with confidence, even without seeing the complete path, your destination will be revealed at the right moment. The mistake is trying to replace faith with control. Control is the disguise of fear. It's the fear of not being enough, of failing, of being deceived. But control is an illusion because life is unpredictable. And the paradox is that the more you release control, the more things fall into place. Because the universe responds to flow, not rigidity. I've seen brilliant entrepreneurs fail because they wanted to understand every single move before acting. And I've seen simple people prosper because they simply followed what they felt was right. The difference between the two isn't intelligence, it's surrender. Those who trust act, those who doubt overthink. And overthinking kills inspiration, kills momentum, kills movement. If you observe nature, you'll notice that everything follows a perfect rhythm without needing to understand why. Seasons change, flowers bloom, tides rise and fall. None of these processes need to be understood to occur. They simply flow because they are in harmony with the law. The human being is the only creature that tries to control the universal flow with logic. And that is precisely why we suffer so much. When I stopped trying to understand everything, I began to trust. And when I trusted, I began to act. And when I acted, the universe began to respond. Not with explanations, but with results. Because life doesn't reward those who know, it rewards those who apply. So if there's something you deeply desire, but keep waiting for the right moment, stop now. The right moment is when you decide. Clarity doesn't come before action, it's born from it. Understanding doesn't precede experience, it's the fruit of it. And the more you postpone, the further you drift from the life you could be living. Everything I achieved began with a simple decision: to follow instructions without questioning. And it was precisely by not trying to understand too much that the transformation occurred, because sometimes to change your life, you don't need more information, you need more obedience to what you already know. Wisdom isn't about accumulating knowledge, but about acting upon it. And it's at this point that many get lost. They seek new formulas when what's missing isn't theory, but commitment. Therefore, if something within you is calling for change, don't wait to understand every detail, just trust. Action generates clarity, faith generates strength, and the result, inevitably, will come. Because the universe always rewards those who dare to believe before they comprehend. There was a time when I believed that people's destinies were determined even before they were born. I saw the successful and thought they had been chosen by luck, by intelligence, or by a mysterious force that didn't favor everyone. And I, during that period of my life, was far from any idea of success. I worked jobs I hated, changing tires, cleaning floors, fixing things I didn't care about. Every day I woke up feeling trapped in an endless cycle of effort without progress. Unbeknownst to me, I was the perfect reflection of scarcity. My pockets were empty, and so was my mind. Money always seemed to slip through my fingers, and I justified it by saying that life was hard. The world was unfair, that someone born poor would hardly ever have a real chance. But one day, something unexpected happened. A man placed a book called Think and Grow Rich into my hands. I had no idea those pages held the beginning of a new life, and he told me something that changed everything. If you do exactly what's written here, your life will never be the same. At that moment, I had absolutely nothing to lose, and so I decided to risk everything. It was the first time I followed something to the letter. I had no formal education, understood nothing about business, knew nothing about success. But what I did have was willpower, and even more importantly, faith. I began to study that book as if it were a survival manual. I read it, reread it, took notes, repeated every teaching aloud, and most importantly, I applied each one, even when it didn't make sense. That's how I discovered the power of obedience to the law. Soon after, I made one of the bravest decisions of my life. I resigned from the Toronto Fire Department, where I was working at the time. Many called me crazy. They said I was throwing away the only security I had. But something inside me screamed, "If you stay here, you'll remain the same." And I knew that if I wanted to change my life, I needed to change my vibration, and that started with the decision. It was then that I opened my first company, a simple cleaning business. No grand strategy, no initial capital, just an idea and the conviction that it would work. I had no plan B. Fear was there every day, whispering that I might fail. But I chose to listen to faith. I worked with passion, with focus, and most importantly, with a new mental image of myself. The image of a prosperous, confident, ascending man. And it was this image that shaped my reality. In the first year, that company generated more than $100,000 in revenue. And for someone who until recently had been living paycheck to paycheck, that number seemed impossible. I remember looking at the results and asking myself, how did this happen so fast? The answer was simple, because I had finally stopped doubting. I had ceased being a victim of circumstances and become a conscious co-creator with the universe. This experience taught me one of life's most powerful lessons. Transformation doesn't depend on education, luck, or connections. It depends on a firm decision and the willingness to follow universal principles without resistance. What changes reality isn't what you know, it's how much you believe in what you apply. And at that moment, even without understanding everything, I was completely aligned with the vibration of faith. I used to think I needed a big opportunity to change. But I discovered that opportunities don't just appear, they are created by the vibration you sustain. My change began the exact moment I stopped saying this is impossible and started saying this is inevitable. When you change the way you see yourself, the whole world changes the way it reacts to you. I realized that the universe doesn't distinguish between those with degrees and those without, between those who started early and those who started late. It only responds to a mind that is in harmony with the laws of abundance. And that harmony is born from within. When I replaced fear with purpose, doubt with gratitude, and despair with a mental image of victory, everything began to align. The right people started appearing, opportunities began to flow, and life started expanding in ways I never imagined possible. The most interesting point is that nothing outside of me had changed at first. The world was the same, the economy was the same, people were the same. What changed was the frequency I emitted. And this new frequency reorganized the world around me. That's why I always say you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. And I stopped being the man of scarcity to become the man of abundance. With every new challenge, I realized that the same laws kept working. Whenever I connected to the vibration of confidence, doors opened. Whenever I let fear take over, everything stopped. That's why I say success isn't an event. It's a state of mind. You first need to become internally the person you wish to be externally, and the universe will do the rest. When I look back, I realize that book, that small act of faith, was the turning point in my story. Because it wasn't just a financial change, it was a shift in consciousness. I understood that there is no poverty when there is clarity of purpose, and no limitation when there is a firm decision. Prosperity didn't begin when the money arrived. It began when I refused to keep living as before. And if there's one thing I learned throughout this journey, it's that life always rewards those who decide, not those who wait, not those who observe, not those who doubt, but those who decide, with body and soul, to follow in the direction of what they believe. Because when you take one step in faith, the universe takes 10 steps towards you. And when this alignment happens, the impossible dissolves and the inevitable manifests. Everything I achieved started with a decision. And it wasn't a common decision, one of those you make and change your mind about a few days later. It was a total, definitive, no turning back decision. I discovered that the universe only moves when you truly commit. As long as there's doubt, nothing happens. The universe doesn't respond to indecision because indecision is a divided energy. It's like trying to row a boat in two directions at the same time. You get tired, but you don't go anywhere. And that's exactly how most people live, desiring a new destination, but with one foot still stuck in the old ground. A true decision is different from a wish. A wish is a spark. A decision is the fire. When you wish for something, you're just imagining. When you decide, you're creating. And I learned sometimes painfully that deciding is cutting off all other possibilities. It's looking at one path and saying, this is the way, no matter the cost. And when you do that, a greater force begins to move. Opportunities that seemed distant begin to align. The right people appear. Resources emerge. It's as if the universe is saying, finally he knows what he wants. I clearly remember the first time I experienced the power of a non-negotiable decision. I had left my job, had no security, no plan B. People around me thought I had lost my mind, but inside me there was a silent certainty. Something I couldn't explain, only feel. It was as if an inner voice said, trust, just trust. And I trusted. For the first few days, it seemed like nothing was happening. Fear knocked at the door every morning. But instead of giving in, I held firm to the decision. It was then that slowly the tide began to turn. The first contract came, then the second, and in a short time, my company was prospering. But the most powerful part of that experience wasn't the money I earned. It was the realization that my life only began to change when I stopped letting emotions decide for me. The decision came before the evidence. I committed before seeing the result. And that's what made everything happen. Many people say they want to change their lives, but what they really want is for change to come without risk, without discomfort, without uncertainty. But there is no true decision without sacrifice. To decide is to let go of security, control, the need for guarantees. It is to trust the invisible. And that's the part that separates dreamers from doers. Dreamers wait to feel ready. Doers decide even when afraid. A decision is an energetic declaration. It tells the universe, I am ready. And when you affirm that with total conviction, everything not aligned with this new frequency begins to dissolve. People leave your life, situations change, new opportunities appear. And yes, sometimes that hurts, because deciding is also losing. But losing what holds you back is the first step to gaining what sets you free. I often say that indecision is the biggest energy thief there is. It siphons clarity, destroys focus, and feeds doubt. And doubt is the opposite of faith. When you doubt, you're telling the universe that you don't believe it's possible. And the universe obediently simply confirms that. But when you decide without hesitation, it responds in the same way. That's the difference between those who try and those who do. How many times have you postponed a dream waiting for the right moment? That job you didn't apply for, the course you didn't start, the relationship you didn't have the courage to end, the business you never launched. And time passed. The truth is, the right moment doesn't exist. The right moment is when you decide. It is the decision that creates the moment, not the other way around. I remember a friend who always said he wanted to write a book. He had talent, ideas, incredible stories. But every time we spoke, he said he wasn't ready yet, that he needed to study more, that the market was tough. 10 years later, he was still saying the same things. His life didn't stop because the universe punished him. It stopped because he never decided to start. The fear of making a mistake caused him to make the worst mistake possible, by not trying. A true decision is an act of faith. Faith isn't hoping for the best. It's knowing the best is already on its way, even when the situation seems the opposite. When you decide and fully align with your choice, something within you shifts. It's as if a switch is flipped. The mind stops doubting, the heart stops wavering, and the body begins to act naturally. And that's when miracles start to happen. I've learned that the universe doesn't respond to vague wishes. It responds to conviction. It needs to feel that you are committed to what you claim you want, because decision is the trigger that activates creation. It's the bridge between the unseen and the seen, between thought and outcome. And when you cross that bridge, the path unfolds step by step. That's why I always say, there is no power in trying. Trying is leaving an emergency exit open. It's an elegant way of saying you haven't truly decided yet. When someone tells me I'll try, I already know they won't follow through. Because trying is indecision in disguise. Life doesn't reward those who merely try. It rewards those who commit wholeheartedly. And perhaps this is the most important lesson I've learned throughout my journey. When you make a true decision, the universe conspires. Not in a magical way, but with precision. Everything that needs to arrive, arrives. Everything that needs to leave, leaves. And when fear strikes, that's because it always does, remember that decision precedes courage. You don't need to be confident to decide. You need to decide to become confident. It was like that for me. I didn't wait to understand everything. I didn't wait for the perfect scenario. I didn't wait for guarantees. I simply decided. And that decision changed everything. Because from the moment you truly decide, the impossible begins to become inevitable. There is a point in the journey where every seeker must make a choice. Continue believing only what they see, or begin to trust what they feel. And that is the crossroads where most people give up. Because trusting before understanding is a challenge for the logical mind, accustomed to needing proof, guarantees, and explanations. But it is precisely there that transformation begins, in the instant you learn to trust the process, even without seeing the outcome. When I started applying these principles, I had no idea how it all worked. All I had was the feeling that there was something greater at play beyond what my eyes could perceive. And it was this silent faith, this trust without proof, that began to open doors that had previously seemed locked. That's why I always say faith comes before vision. You don't see to believe, you believe to see. People often think they need to understand everything before acting, but that's what keeps them stuck. Understanding only comes after experience. It's like crossing a bridge in the fog. You don't see the other side, but you take the first step because you trust that the bridge is there. This is what separates those paralyzed by fear from those who truly transform their lives. And if you've made it this far and something within you has begun to stir, pause for a moment and feel this energy. It's calling you to take one step beyond the familiar. And if what I've said so far has resonated with you, I want to ask you for something. Subscribe to the channel now and hit the like button. Because what comes next will further expand your understanding of how to create an entirely new reality. And if this content is touching something within you, it's because your consciousness is already ready to evolve to the next level. When I finally understood the power of trusting before understanding, everything changed. I stopped fighting against circumstances. I stopped trying to control the how, and I began to focus only on the why. I learned that the conscious mind has a constant need to know how things will happen, but the how is not your job. The how is the universe's task. Your only role is to keep your vibration aligned, your faith firm, and your action constant. And when you do that, the path unfolds on its own. There is a magical moment that occurs when you act driven by trust. It's as if the universe silently begins to conspire in your favor. People appear, ideas arrive, coincidences multiply, and everything that once seemed impossible begins to fall perfectly into place. This isn't luck, it's alignment. I remember one specific day when my company was still just starting out, and bills seemed to pile up faster than I could pay them. I was exhausted, unsure of what to do, and seriously considered giving up. It was then that something within me said, "Keep going, just keep going." I didn't know how I would solve everything, but I decided to trust. The very next day, without me having done anything but maintain faith, a contract I hadn't even expected was signed. That contract not only saved the business, but taught me something I've never forgotten. The universe tests your trust before delivering the result. It's easy to trust when everything is going well, but it's in moments of uncertainty that true faith is forged. It's when you continue believing, even without seeing anything happen, that your inner power begins to expand. Because the energy of faith creates movement, and movement creates results. When you give up, you cut off the flow. But when you persist, even without understanding, you send the universe a clear message: I am ready. And that's when things start to happen in an almost unbelievable way. What seemed distant begins to draw near. What seemed impossible starts to take shape. Closed doors open naturally. And you realize that the universe never said no. It was just waiting for you to trust enough to continue. Trust isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act despite fear. It's telling yourself, I don't know how, but I know it will work out. That's the energy that creates miracles, because when you vibrate at the frequency of certainty, the universe responds in equal measure. How many times have you given up just because you didn't see progress? How many opportunities have you let slip away because the result didn't come when you expected it? Most people abandon the process one step before life changes. They don't realize that at the very moment things seem worst, that's precisely when the universe is reorganizing to deliver what was asked. But for that, you need to remain steadfast. Trust is the link between the unseen and the seen. It's what transforms thought into matter, desire into reality. And until you understand this emotionally, you will continue to oscillate between faith and doubt, and the universe will continue to reflect that oscillation in your results. I learned to trust the process, even without understanding. And that was one of the greatest victories of my life, because the mind craves control, but the spirit craves expansion, and control never leads to expansion. The only way to grow is to release fear, release attachment, and walk even without seeing the complete destination. So, if you're in the midst of a process and feel that nothing is happening, trust. Continue. Life doesn't fail. It merely tests your level of faith. And when you prove that you truly believe, the universe bows and opens all doors. The secret lies in continuing, even without understanding. Because it is precisely in that moment that the unseen begins to work in your favor. For 7 days, I want you to become a conscious observer of your own mind. Most people spend their lives reacting, without realizing they are perpetuating the same vibrational pattern day after day. They wake up, grab their phone, see negative news, look at their bills, and immediately set the energetic tone for their entire day. And then they wonder why nothing changes. For these 7 days, you will do things differently. Every morning before touching your phone, close your eyes and imagine yourself living exactly the life you desire. Feel what it would be like to wake up peacefully, with the sensation that you are precisely where you should be. See the place where you live, the people who surround you, the routine you've built. See yourself free, confident, grateful. Feel it. This is essential because the universe doesn't respond to what you think, but to what you feel with intensity and conviction. Emotion is the fuel of creation. When you truly feel something, your subconscious mind takes that vibration as an order. It doesn't differentiate between what is real and what is vividly felt. That's why, when you live in worry, you end up attracting more reasons to worry. And when you're excited, doors seem to open with ease. It's not a coincidence, it's resonance. During these 7 days, I want you to deliberately create this resonance. Wake up and tell yourself, today I choose to vibrate abundance, confidence, and gratitude. And don't just repeat it like a robot. Declare it as someone who genuinely chooses to live in that state. Now, I know the mind will resist. It will try to pull you back into old patterns. It will say, this is nonsense, it's not working, you're fooling yourself. This is to be expected. Every time one of these voices appears, breathe and remember. The simple act of choosing a new thought is already reprogramming your subconscious. You don't need to fight against negative thoughts. Simply replace them with another. For example, if your mind says, I can't, respond mentally, I can, I am learning. If it says, this is difficult, say, this is getting easier every day. The brain learns through repetition and emotion, and the more you repeat with feeling, the faster it imprints the new pattern. Throughout the day, stay attentive to your vibration. Observe the words you use, the tone of your voice, the energy of your conversations. Talking about lack, fear, or crisis is like watering the soil of scarcity. So during these 7 days, make a vow to yourself. Don't talk about problems, talk about possibilities. When someone complains, don't enter that vibration. Smile and say, everything is working itself out. I believe in it. You'll realize that many people aren't accustomed to this kind of response, but it's not them you're talking to. It's your subconscious. And perhaps by the 3rd or 4th day, you'll notice small coincidences. An unexpected call, an invitation, a new thought, an idea that makes sense. Don't call it a coincidence, call it alignment. You're beginning to vibrate at a different frequency, and life is responding. It might be subtle at first, but this is how every great transformation begins, silently, internally, almost imperceptibly, until it becomes impossible to ignore. I clearly remember the first time I experienced this. During a difficult period, I decided to do exactly this exercise. It seemed foolish at first, but I kept going. On the 5th day, an old contact reached out to me with a business opportunity that changed everything. The synchronicity was impossible to explain by logic, yet entirely consistent with the energy I was emitting. The biggest obstacle you'll face during these 7 days isn't the world, nor circumstances, but your own impatience. People give up before the outcome because they want to see before they believe. But the law works in reverse. You believe first, you feel first, and then you see. So promise yourself that you will complete the challenge to the very end, without exceptions. It doesn't matter if the day seems difficult, if someone provokes you, if fear tries to creep in, maintain your focus. Return to the vibration, return to the vision, return to gratitude. If you do this with sincerity, not just thinking, but truly feeling, you will notice something extraordinary. The very situations that once irritated you will begin to lose their power. People will treat you differently. Dormant ideas will surface, and most importantly, you will begin to feel in control, not of the world, but of yourself. And that is what changes everything. Because the universe doesn't respond to those who complain, it responds to those who command their own energy. Throughout these 7 days, act as if you are already the person you wish to be. Walk with confidence, speak with kindness, dress with purpose, choose thoughts that reflect who you are becoming. When you do this, you will be sending a powerful message to your subconscious. This is how I live now. And your subconscious, obedient, will do everything to align the physical world with this new truth. Life will begin to reorganize itself around you. The right people will approach, doors will open, ideas will flow. And when you realize it, you won't just be completing a challenge, you'll be experiencing living proof that the frequency you choose is the frequency that creates your reality. All you need to do is follow this precisely. 7 days. 7 dawns of consciousness and feeling. No adjustments, no "I'll try it my way." Just do it. And then, see with your own eyes what happens when you become the conscious creator of your vibration. Because when your frequency changes, the entire world changes with you. The human mind is fascinating but also treacherous. It possesses the incredible capacity to create empires and, at the same time, the terrible power to sabotage its own success. And the most dangerous enemy isn't failure, it isn't fear, it isn't lack of opportunity, it is the ego. This small imposter that disguises itself as logic, as prudence, as common sense. The ego is the one that whispers, "Wait a little longer, think it over, understand before you act." It makes you believe you're being rational, when in reality you're being controlled by fear, and fear disguised as logic is what keeps most people stagnant. For years, I wanted to understand everything. I wanted to be absolutely sure that things would work out before I started. I wanted proof, guarantees, signs. And because of that, I postponed countless opportunities. Until one day I realized something that completely changed my life. Understanding never precedes action. It comes afterward. You don't understand in order to start. You start in order to understand. This was true for every significant change in my journey. When I opened my first business, I had no idea how to run a company. I had no plan, no experience. I only had one clear instruction, and I decided to follow it to the letter. Logic said I would fail, but faith said I was already on my way, and faith won. People confuse faith with naivete, but faith is mental discipline. It's the ability to act even when the mind screams for explanations. The ego hates this because it thrives on control. It needs to understand, calculate, predict. But the truth is that life doesn't reveal itself to those who wait to understand. It opens up to those who trust. And trust, paradoxical as it may seem, is one of the most rational forces that exist because it is based on a universal law. Everything you feel with conviction tends to manifest. The ego wants external proof. The spirit asks for internal coherence. And when you have the courage to silence the ego and follow your intuition, the entire universe begins to cooperate with you. I remember a situation that perfectly illustrates this. I was facing a decision that could change everything, an investment that to logical eyes seemed absurd. People around me said, "Bob, that's too risky. What if it doesn't work out?" The old me would have backed down, but this time I listened to that calm, firm inner voice that said, "Trust." And I trusted. No guarantees, no plan B. I just took the step. And it was precisely that step that led me to one of the biggest expansions in my career. Today I understand that if I had waited for the fear to pass, I would still be stuck in the same place. Fear doesn't disappear with time, it disappears with movement. And perhaps this is what traps people most. This belief that they need to feel ready before acting. That never happens, no one feels ready. The perfect moment doesn't exist. What exists is the instant you decide to move forward, even while trembling, even without understanding, even with doubts, because it's in that instant that you prove to the universe you're willing to play at another level. That's where the energy changes, and that's where opportunities begin to appear. The act of faith opens paths that logic would never see. The ego, however, is clever. It doesn't sabotage you, obviously. It hides behind phrases that sound reasonable. Perhaps it's not the right time. I need to think it over. I don't know enough yet. But if you observe closely, you'll realize that these phrases are just masks for a much deeper fear, the fear of stepping out of your comfort zone. And the irony is, the more you try to protect yourself, the further you get from what you truly desire. Security isn't in understanding everything, it's in trusting the process. Life is like a road shrouded in fog. You don't see the entire path, only a few feet ahead. But if you keep driving, the next stretch reveals itself. The problem is that most people pull over, waiting for the fog to clear, and it never completely clears. You move forward, and the path moves with you. This is the movement of faith. Clarity comes with movement. Understanding comes with action. Always. When I understood this, everything became simpler. I stopped fighting with the method. I stopped trying to improve the instructions. I simply followed. And it was in that act of conscious obedience that I discovered true freedom, because when you surrender control, something greater begins to lead. Call it universal law, energy, God, the name doesn't matter. What matters is the surrender. And this surrender is the key that the ego fears most because it dissolves the ego. It loses its power when you choose to trust. Perhaps you are stuck in this dilemma now, between what the mind says is safe and what the heart insists on showing you. And if that's the case, I want to tell you something I learned after many falls. If your heart calls you, go. Fear will scream, the ego will argue, people will question, but go anyway. Because doubt kills more dreams than failure ever could. And when you finally take the step, something extraordinary happens. The universe rearranges the pieces that once seemed disconnected. Synchronicities align, answers arrive, the right people appear, the energy shifts, and everything starts to make sense. Understanding comes after action, always afterward. That's why the results are so different between those who believe and those who analyze. The analytical person lives studying the map, the confident person is traversing the path, and in the end, the one who arrives isn't the smartest, but the most determined. Life rewards courage, not doubt. The logic of the universe isn't linear, it's vibrational. You attract what you believe in enough to act upon. So if there's a decision you've been postponing, a project, a dream, a step that frightens you, perhaps that is precisely the portal to the next level of your life. Don't wait to understand everything to begin. Begin, and understanding will come. Because clarity isn't the starting point, it's the reward for having trusted. For many years, I believed that my success depended on external factors, the economy, the government, luck, or the people around me. When the economy was good, I felt confident. When something went wrong in the country, I felt fear. It was as if my emotional and financial stability were tied to something outside my control. And that's when I realized how much I lived at the mercy of what I call the external economy. A system that constantly changes, that creates ups and downs, and that teaches you to believe you are just a pawn within it. But the truth is, there is a much more powerful and stable economy, your inner economy. The inner economy is the sum of your beliefs, emotions, and attitudes toward life. It is the true engine behind your financial results, your prosperity, and even your well-being. It is the invisible foundation upon which everything else is built. My external reality only truly began to shift when I started tending to this inner economy. I realized that while the world swung between crises and recoveries, I could cultivate stability within myself. Because when you are aligned with inner abundance, it doesn't matter if the dollar's value rises or falls, if inflation climbs, or if the market crashes, your vibration remains steadfast, and it is that unwavering energy that creates your field of opportunities. I vividly recall the moment I definitively grasped this truth. It was a time when everyone around me was talking about recession, layoffs, and bankruptcies. The media constantly fueled the fear, and I, like anyone else, began to feel the pressure of that environment. Until one day, sitting in silence, I realized the problem isn't the economy. The problem is how I am reacting to it. I was vibrating scarcity, worry, and despair, and the universe merely returned more of the same. So I decided to change. Instead of consuming negative news, I began to seek out constructive ideas. Instead of talking about what was lacking, I started to give thanks for what I already had. In a short time, I noticed new opportunities beginning to appear. The economy out there hadn't changed, but mine had, and it was my inner economy that rewrote my financial reality. When you understand this, you realize that every crisis is an illusion. It's a collective reflection of people's fear. If you allow yourself to get caught up in that energy, you start operating at the same frequency and inevitably attract similar results. But if you remain centered, vibrating with confidence, gratitude, and vision, you become a point of stability amidst the chaos. And that is what differentiates those who prosper from those who lose everything. Consider this. In every major crisis throughout history, there have always been people who thrived. During recessions, wars, and collapses, while many were sinking, others were building empires. Not because they were lucky, but because they learned to operate from their own inner economy rather than from the world's economy. That's exactly what I did. I decided I would no longer live reacting to external circumstances. I chose to be the cause, not the effect. I stopped worrying about what I couldn't control and began to invest in what was entirely within my domain, my mind. And when the mind changes, everything changes. I started to think differently, to feel differently, and to act differently, and this led me to completely new results. Today, while many still wait for the world to improve, I continue creating my own economy every single day. Through the ideas I generate, the decisions I make, and the energy I choose to emit. Most people believe they need more money to feel secure, but it's exactly the opposite. It's when you feel secure, stable, and abundant internally that money begins to flow. Because money is energy, and energy follows the direction of consciousness. Have you ever noticed that people anxious and desperate for money seem to push it away, while those who are calm, confident, and clear of purpose attract it naturally? This isn't luck, it's vibration. It's physics applied to the mind. When you focus on lack, your subconscious interprets that you desire more lack. When you focus on abundance, it understands it should bring more of it. And it's not just about money. The inner economy influences every area of your life: relationships, health, opportunities, creativity. Everything you experience externally is a reflection of the internal balance you maintain. It's as if your mind were a printer and the world the paper. If the file within it is distorted, the print will always come out blurry, and changing the paper won't solve it. It's the file that needs to be redone, and that file is your belief system. For a long time, I was trapped in the belief that success was a matter of effort, struggle, and resistance. Today, I know that success is a matter of attunement. It is the natural result of a balanced mind and a grateful heart. When you are at peace, you act with more wisdom. When you trust, your decisions are more assertive. When you vibrate with joy, you attract more people who uplift you. The inner economy is not a philosophical concept. It is a practical strategy for prosperity. It protects you from external storms because it creates an unshakable inner foundation. I began building my inner economy when I stopped living in reaction to the news and started creating my own reality. And that is precisely why I built a life of freedom. Today, I work from wherever I want, with whomever I want, and in whatever way I want. Not because the world handed it to me, but because I chose to vibrate in that reality every single day. And the most powerful thing is that anyone can do the same. It's not a matter of background, luck, or resources. It's a matter of decision and consistency. The decision to stop being a product of the economy and start being its architect. The consistency of staying aligned even when everything seems to be collapsing outside. Because the world is merely the mirror of your consciousness. And when your inner self is prosperous, the exterior has no choice but to reflect that. True wealth doesn't begin with the money that enters your account, but with the feeling of abundance that dwells in your heart. And when you understand and practice this truth, you realize that the most powerful economy that exists has always been within you. If this message resonated with you, perhaps sparking a thought, a memory, or that deep feeling that you are truly ready for change, then please share this video with someone special. Someone who might need to hear this today, someone who is silently struggling to find direction, and who could completely transform their own life with a simple decision to change from within. I deeply thank you for staying with me until this point, for dedicating your time to expanding your consciousness and nurturing your own inner economy. Continue with me on this journey, because the best is yet to come. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.